The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
All right, it's a lot of NBA to get to. The Wizards, well, they played offense last night. Defense? That's another story. The Victor Wembanyama debut. By the way, how'd you like to be Luka Doncic? You have this unbelievable game, 33 points, 13 rebounds, 10 assists, and he's the oh, by the way in that story because everybody's talking about Victor Wembanyama and his debut, which was good. I don't think it outran the hype, but he's going to be good. I'm not going out on a limb there, but I think he's going to be a really good player in the NBA. My buddy Dave Barnett is going to join me from Dallas in the 10 o'clock hour with a preview of the World Series, which starts tomorrow night in Texas as the matchup that I think we all anticipated, right? Arizona and the Rangers get started. We've got the games here on ESPN 630, so coverage here tomorrow will start at 7 o'clock for Game 1, and we'll preview that with him. Also, Dave at one time was the voice of the Mavericks and the voice of the San Antonio Spurs on television. So he's got familiarity with both the franchises. So we'll lean on him a little bit for what happened last night in San Antonio between the two teams. And I'll get to that in just a moment here. Reaction from Tim Legler, what he saw, and also Victor Wembanyama on his performance. But you might as well start here with the Wizards. And I guess it's not a surprise that they got blown out in their opener at Indiana. But when you score 120 points, you ought to at least make it a close game. This wasn't. The Pacers scored 143 points. It's the Pacers. You know, they score. Sure, they got some really good players, but they were able to jack up 106 shots, hit 56 of them. And, yeah, it was close in the first half, but second half was a joke. And every year, you hear, oh, the defense is better. We've worked on the defense. We've added more coaches to help our defense. Defense non-existent last night. At least Wes Unseld admitted it. He said tonight it was everywhere about the defensive malaise. It was transition. It was one-on-one. It was pick and roll. It was pretty much an all-you-can-eat buffet. 8 players, 8 for Indiana in double figures. And this is the kind of year it's going to be. You had Kyle Kuzma with 25 points. He's going to be a big scorer this year. He's got a big contract. And the question is, will he be with the team at the end of the year, or will he be a trade deadline move where they're going to load up on draft picks on a year where, you know, they're just, they won't use the word rebuild, but whatever's going on here is not a pretty sight. Who else scored last night? Yeah, Poole got his points. He got 18 points, 7 of 18 shooting. Kuzma was 9 of 18 from the field. Corey Kispert jacked up 11 shots last night. I don't know where he found them. I guess he wasn't playing with those guys. And good old Denny Advia, a starter, logged 20 minutes and had 9 points. So there you go. We'll see what happens when they play Memphis on Saturday night. Not tomorrow night, but Saturday night is the home opener. All right, Victor Wembanyama. He did start the game and missed a lot of it. Now, I was watching, after the Wizards game became a joke, I was watching the Knicks and the Celtics. And Kristaps Porzingis, by the way, set a record in his debut, a Celtics debut, 30 points. That's the most ever in a debut game. You know, the Celtics were always famous for sharing the ball, and their greatest player was Bill Russell, who didn't care too much about scoring. He cared about blocking shots and playing defense. Yeah, Larry Bird was a great player, but they had enough talent around him. He didn't need to score 30 points in the first game. And the game was different. You know, you didn't have big men jacking up threes, which is what Victor Wembanyama did to get many of his 15 points. Now, the thing that you have to be concerned about a little bit here is he was in foul trouble and was not on the floor in a lot of key points in the game. They put him in late. He made some nice shots at the end, but picked up his second foul with 43 seconds left of the first quarter, played just 5 minutes and 33 seconds in the second quarter. In the third, he picked up 2 fouls in the first 3.5 minutes and sat out for the rest of the quarter. And when he came back for the fourth quarter, he went right back to the bench. 26 seconds in, he picked up his fifth foul. Now he's skinny, very skinny. He looks like a rake, and so teams are going to go at him and force him to foul because he's not going to be physical enough to handle anybody inside. They said I think only 4 of his attempts were in the paint. He's a 7'4" jump shooter, and I've heard you heard the comparison that he's a taller version of Kevin Durant. Not there skills wise yet, but at 19 years old, I think you'd take what you saw. Now, when I think of debuts, the one that comes to mind, I mean, maybe there are others, but the one that comes to mind that really outran his hype was Steven Strasburg. Strasburg was, thought to be the next Nolan Ryan, and he did have some great moments, including World Series MVP. Unfortunately, his career was ended by injuries, but when he made his debut in 2010, it was remarkable how much coverage there was for this. And he pitched against the Pirates. He went 7 innings. He struck out 14, including the last 7 he faced. And, oh, my God. So that was a debut. Last night, Wembanyama, I think you'd take that. And I think you saw some of the skills that will make him a great player in the years to come. But obviously there's some growing pains here, and staying out of foul trouble is one of them. This was Wembanyama after the performance where they lost the game last night to Dallas, 126-119.
Lots of emotions, of course, but would have been perfect with a win.
When you walked out there tonight, even to warm up, the fans were already there. They were already cheering. What was that moment like for you? And did that hype you up? Yeah,
it felt surreal for a moment. Yeah, and I just feel very lucky to be here.
Mm-hmm. So he's not going to be a ball of fire. He's not overwhelmed by the moment. He's still only 19 years old, and he's playing against grown men here, and men who can knock him around. Then the game isn't as physical as it used to be, but it's a game that it caused him to have 5 fouls, and that can't continue if he's going to develop into one of the superstars of the league. Tim Legler, watching the game with Scott Van Pelt last night, his analysis of what he saw from Wembanyama.
Foul trouble impacts his ability to impact the game. But in the moments that we saw what we saw, what'd you see?
Yeah, it's so unique because of his length and his ability to get that comfortable in tight spaces to shoot the ball, over NBA caliber defenders. You saw a number of those in this game, but really, here's what's going to happen with Wembanyama, and people need to understand, Greg Popovich is going to go out of his way to deflect any sort of scrutiny coming his direction by making him a focal point. Mm-hmm. Right now, he's probably their 3rd or 4th option at best most trips, and that's what you saw in this game. He spent a lot of time sort of drifting around, trying to find pockets. They ran nothing designed for him. Mm-hmm. That will come as time, allows. And he's got to get, obviously, stronger to be able to hold his position. You saw a couple times he tried to post up and got pushed out of there. That's going to happen with his frame right now. But the one thing that's undeniable is his ability to get into his shot off the bounce from any distance, no matter who's inside of his jersey. It's special, but you don't want to see Victor Wembanyama live at the three-point line. Maybe he will be here early in the year until he starts to get more comfortable, that he's going to get calls in the paint, that he can hold his position better in the post, that they run more design stuff for him. You're not going to see that probably here early in the year, but the defensive impact's there. And then that beautiful ability to get into his pull-up jump shot over just about anybody is special right now.
Pop's Pop, and you mentioned they've got like a couple of guys, and Vassell, maybe Johnson, and different guys. Right. They haven't been good. There was a reason. You get this guy. Yeah. What's your sense of what they can be, big picture? Not asking him to be everything yet. Are they a 500 type team? That would seem pretty optimistic to me.
Can't see that right now. Yeah. No, maybe you're looking more like a 30-win team. This year, young, exciting, fun. You're going to really enjoy watching them, not just because of Wembanyama. Look like they got a bunch of guys that are kind of believing they're going to have fun here growing together because they've got such a young core. Okay. And as he continues to impose himself on the game, you'll see more success the second half of the season. I'd put them somewhere 30, 35 wins at max this year. And then, you add to that each year within a few years, hopefully you're relevant in the West.
So that's Legler's analysis of what he saw from Wembanyama. Yet Wembanyama, it's with an M right at the end, not the end. Okay, Wembanyama. I've heard it both ways, but and we'll get used to saying it. I thought Antetokounmpo, we could never get to that. Tagovailoa. We never learned how to pronounce that. So it just takes practice. It takes practice to get these names down. All right, let's get to the Commanders here. And I think the obvious discussion is still what's going on with Sam Howell and the sacks. So we'll get to that. But this was the first access to the players since the loss on Sunday in New York. And the headline that came out of that was Jonathan Allen dropping a bunch of F-bombs about how frustrated he was. Yesterday, he was cleaned up in language, but as he said to reporters, still feeling the same way he did on Sunday afternoon.
I mean, I still feel the same. We're all frustrated. Yeah. It's the NFL. You know what I mean? Every team has great players, and we didn't make the plays to win the game, and they did. So.
What do you think about the response over these last couple of days from the team just to kind of move forward and turn the page here?
I mean, that's all we can do. I mean, there's only week 7 or going into week 8. So, I mean, it would be foolish for us to not turn the page forward and move forward, turn the page and move forward. Like, we have a lot of season left to play.
The number one story, of course, is the Howell sacks, and a couple of dives into this. One we talked about yesterday. Neil Greenberg, the analytics guy for the Post, took a look at all the stats for Howell and basically says he's not mediocre. He stinks right now. These stats stink. Not being helped by the offensive line for sure. Not being helped by the play calling from Eric Bieniemy, where the Commanders are number two in the NFL for percentage of passes versus runs, 58%, behind only the Minnesota Vikings, who have obviously an experienced quarterback there in Kirk Cousins. So that's not helping him. But it continues to be the number one topic, and this was Hal yesterday, who was questioned about it several times in about a 9-minute news conference, and finally said this.
I think everyone's kind of tired of hearing about it, but I mean, I think obviously it's you guys' job to keep talking about it, and it's our job to fix it. And so that's the reality of it. So all I try to do is try to come in here each and every day and try to look at the ways that we can do a better job in protection, and how I can do a better job of getting rid of the football. Speaking of protection, Ron Rivera finally admitted yesterday that changes on the offensive line are on the table. And the numbers, you probably don't even need to hear them, but they are astounding. 6 sacks, 12 hits on Hal just in the last game. The offensive line, which includes a couple of high-priced free agents, has been a disaster. Nick Gates signed a 3-year, $16.5 million contract in the offseason with Chase Roulier retiring because of a knee injury, and they have brought in Tyler Larson, who's been here before and has backed up before. There's some discussion that they would bench Gates, which would be yet another admission that they don't know what the hell they're doing in free agency and the draft. And also Andrew Wiley, who was part of the Kansas City Chiefs, but obviously the weak link of that line. They weren't sorry to see him go. Got a 3-year, $24 million contract. He's bad. Sam Cosmi, maybe a more natural tackle. That's what he was drafted as out of Texas. He's at guard now. And the only holdover is Charles Leno on the left side, who didn't play in the game before because of a family tragedy. His wife had given birth to a stillborn the day before, and was back and is back now, and seemingly, seems to be in a good state of mind. But the offensive line is terrible. We know that. But, I've been going back and forth with a lot of people on Twitter. It's not all the offensive line that has caused these 40 sacks. But here's some more numbers. They are the only line in the NFL with 3 starters who each have allowed 15 pressures and 3 sacks through week 7. So there's 9 at the fault of the line there. But again, it's 40 sacks, plenty of sacks to choose from there. And Hal's got to take some of the blame for that. The issue beyond the starters is the guys behind him apparently aren't good enough to get on the field. They drafted Ricky Stromberg in the 3rd round. He's played, I think, 26 snaps all year. Braden Daniels, they took him in the 4th round. He hurt his knee. He's out for the year. And then if you are going to bench Gates at center, there's more significant implications. She writes his contract includes $8 million guaranteed. They're not bumping their head on the salary cap, so maybe they can get rid of him, but you don't like to admit that free agent signing, a guy you paid a lot of money to, stinks, can't play. Larson, who could take his place, started 11 games
in 2021 and 2022, and only allowed 4 sacks and 20 pressures. Well, that's, that's Hall of Fame numbers compared to what they've been putting up there. So maybe that move makes some sense. I mentioned the pass run ratio, the 58% that they're running. I mean, I look at the stats after the game and I go, Jesus, what are they doing? What Brian Robinson, 8 carries last week, 10 the week before. He's got a total of 104 yards in the last 3 games. Give him the ball some. This is how maybe kind of lobbying in that direction as well.
Every quarterback would say a good run game would help them for sure, just because I think everyone knows if you're running the ball well, then it opens up more stuff in the passing game. So I think most teams probably go into every single game hoping to have a good balance of run and pass, and everyone wants to establish the running game because everything is built off of that. Some games it's easier than others, and some games it just doesn't happen, and you're forced to throw the ball more than you'd like to. But at the end of the day, you still got to go out there and make plays and try to make it happen. But yeah, man, I think every offense would say they go into every single game trying to establish the running game just because it helps the O-line out, helps the quarterback out, it helps the receivers have more space. It just helps everybody when you're able to have that balance.
But they don't. They haven't tried to establish the running game. And last week against the Giants, I don't think they threw a pass in the first quarter. I mean, I'm sorry, a run. They ran the ball at all in the first quarter. It's Bieniemy coming over from Kansas City where you have Patrick Mahomes and you can do this, and Travis Kelce. You don't have that here. Last thing on this, Rivera on the Howell attitude and how he's handled all of this discussion about the sacks.
He's the same guy. He shows up, does his work, works really hard. He's very enthusiastic about his job. He loves playing the game. He hasn't changed one bit. I mean, he's learning and growing, and he's having fun at it. Obviously, if you ask him, he'll tell you just what you said. Yeah, it's not fun being sacked 40 times, but, he's doing what he can.
Right. We'll have more on this coming up at 10 o'clock. Charles Leno says the sky isn't falling. Okay. And other nuggets on the Commanders as they get ready to play the Eagles. A little curious as to what's going on with Jalen Hurts. The Eagles are not saying necessarily that he's playing with a knee injury, but they're saying that, we'll see how it goes. Hurts said, I don't want to make it bigger than what it is. I think it's something that comes with every player in the league. Things happen in this league, and you just try to avoid them. He played the second half against the Dolphins with a knee brace. Did not look, the same as he has looked before, but he is going to play. Apparently, there isn't much of a chance that he'll sit out the game with the knee injury. Coming up, more from Ron Rivera, team's mindset, what Charles Leno says about it, plus World Series preview and more with Dave Barnett from Dallas. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. All right, we are rolling till noon today, a typical Thursday. Tony has the day off. We'll get to the World Series. My buddy Dave Barnett, who spent his whole life in the Dallas area, although did spend some time. I had breakfast with him a couple of weeks ago. North Texas is the team that he broadcasts for now. That's where he went to school, and they were playing Navy and got together, and we talked about a lot of things. I didn't realize this. When he was doing the Spurs on TV, and he did them for a number of years, he lived in San Antonio and said he liked it. The problem was because of all his other work, he did college football games for a long time for ESPN and other things. He said it's a small airport and it's difficult to get direct flights, and just living in Dallas made that a lot easier. So he moved back to his hometown, and now is older, has grandchildren. I have a grandchild. He has grandchildren. And he has done play-by-play for many, many teams, including the Spurs, including the Mavericks, who played last night, and including the Texas Rangers, who open up the World Series tomorrow night at home against the Arizona Diamondbacks in a series nobody predicted at the start of the playoffs, at the start of the year, and maybe nobody wants to say. We'll see what the ratings are. I think Philadelphia would have done better, although television ratings for the World Series have gotten smaller and smaller. What will help them, I think, is that these games will end sooner than 1 o'clock in the morning. I think that's going to be helpful for the sport in the long run. But this is the first year of the pitch clock, and it's going to take a while to catch on. And as far as sexy names to watch, there really aren't any. Bryce Harper would be a guy that people would want to see. I don't know if there's anybody in this matchup other than, Max Scherzer pitching, but Max ain't Max no more. So, and they'll probably have to throw him out there. We'll talk to Dave about that, but they've had so many injuries. As bad as he's looked in his last 2 outings, he's probably going to have to start at least one of the games in this series. But we'll get more from Dave coming up at 10:20. Also on the baseball front, Dusty Baker has now confirmed that he was retiring. The Athletic had this the day that Texas beat them to advance to the World Series. And Dusty had told people during the season that he was going to retire. And he talked to Bob Nightingale of USA Today, who had the exclusive yesterday on this. They're going to have a new news conference at Minute Maid Park in Houston where he'll officially announce this. And I love Dusty the 2 years he was here. I know they didn't get out of the first round, and that's what cost him his job, and he was making more money than the Lerners wanted to pay him. But I think he was really cool, and he was just what they needed at the time, because Matt Williams was an uptight disaster. He could not handle it. He was a guy who's identified for a long time as someone who would be a great manager, and Mike Rizzo, who knew him from their days in Arizona, thought he would be a great manager, brought him here, and he was a disaster. Although he was manager of the year in his first year where they won the division, but, went by the book in that playoff game against the Giants, which they lost in 15 innings, and, just things that he did that were weird in the first year. And then the second year, the team just fell apart. And finally, the climax was Jonathan Papelbon choking Bryce Harper in the dugout with Williams not far away and saying he didn't see it. I mean, total dysfunction at the end of the year. He had to go in, and Dusty comes in, and Dusty is, he's a guy who knows all these celebrities. He's got this unbelievable history in baseball where he played 19 years, played with Hank Aaron with the Braves, played on the Dodgers World Series championship team, and had managed other teams. In fact, he is the only manager to take 5 different teams to the postseason. And if there was any doubt about the Hall of Fame, that was erased last year when the Astros won the World Series. He says he wants to stay in baseball, not going to manage anymore, but wants to be in an advisory capacity, maybe near his home in Sacramento, which I guess would mean like the Giants, perhaps. And, maybe that happens. We'll see. But he's also interested in maybe staying in the front office of the Astros. Some of the numbers here for his career, for his legacy. And again, I believe he should be a first ballot Hall of Famer. He ranks 7th in all-time wins, 2,183, 57 postseason victories. That's the 4th most in baseball history. As I say, the only manager to lead 5 different teams to the postseason, and the only manager who has won at least 2,000 games and isn't in the Hall of Fame is Bruce Bochy, and he's not eligible because he's managing again. Came close because you could be on the ballot after 3 years if you're a manager, and Bochy sat out 3 years, and then he came back and he coached the Rangers, or managed the Rangers, I should say, and he's got the Rangers in the World Series beating Dusty. As a matter of fact, Dusty said he talked to Bochy during the season about this because Bochy said in 2019 when he was with the Giants that he was leaving at the end of the season, and he said that was a big distraction. He said it wasn't what he should have done. It wasn't fair to the players. So Dusty kept quiet about it, knowing that this would be his last year, and stepped down. And he also said, which surprised me, because he said he was going to do this, but I wonder if it came to this. He said even if the Astros repeated as World Series champs, he was going to go. Well, you got to come back after you win last year. I mean, you got to come back and defend. Dick Vermeil made this mistake when he coached the Rams after sitting out, I think, 14 years after leaving the Eagles, came back with the Rams and won the Super Bowl and thought, okay, that's it. I reached the top of the mountain. I got to retire. And he left. And then a year later, he goes, what did I just do? So he came back and coached a few more years with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think if you win, you owe it to yourself to try to repeat, even if you're thinking about retiring. And back-to-back, why not go for 3? How many have won 3 in a row? Casey Stengel, Dick Williams, not many. Not many guys have won 3 straight. But what a great career Dusty had as both a player and a manager. And it'll be great to see him go in the Hall of Fame in 3 years. All right, back to the Commanders and the malaise that remains over this team after the ugly loss to the Giants on Sunday. Ron Rivera, trying to keep the stiff upper lip on this, says, it's not as bad as you think here.
Yeah, but I think it's in a good place just because of the fact that, we put ourselves in position. We had a couple opportunities to win some games that, unfortunately, we didn't get it done. This is one of the teams coming up. Philadelphia is a game that, we had a good opportunity in. So, trying to rally on that. And I think that's something that the guys are focusing on, is that's the opportunity.
He likes that word, opportunity. Charles Leno, who had a terrible tragedy in his family, caused him to miss playing in the game against Atlanta, back on the field on Sunday, and a locker room leader. And at the suggestion of, and I'll give you a little inside baseball here. When reporters go into the locker room, there were 2 years during COVID where they couldn't go in, but they're back to the way it was, the normal situation where the locker room is open on Wednesday. And while some will conduct one-on-one interviews, there really isn't the time or the access to that. Player stands in front of his locker, a bunch of reporters go around him, and they get what they call sound bites, or newspaper reporters get quotes. So this was very well set up, I thought, by Chick Hernandez, who's a longtime veteran, knows what to do. If you're looking for a really good sound bite, you ask a question in a certain way. So I think kind of knowing what he was going to get, but knowing that it would make good television and good for whatever kind of report he was putting together, Chick said to Charles Leno, well, so is it over?
Heck no. I don't even know where it... What? That's a lot of football left, man. Right? A lot of football left. Like, we're nowhere near done. We're nowhere near, like, saying we're out of it or anything like that. Everybody else can count us out. That's fine. I don't really care about what everyone else thinks. I care about what these guys in the locker room think.
Yeah, that's a good soundbite. It's better than, you don't think it's over, do you? Oh, no, it's not over. Oh, heck no. See, that's what you're looking for. This is more from Leno, along the same vein about where this team stands now at 3-4.
The sky's not falling. I've been through this a lot of times, you know what I'm saying? So we just got to stay the course and understand that we're pulling for each other. Let's not start pointing fingers or doing anything like that. It's everyone's involved in this. We all can get through this together. Together. Also, the week to week, the way it is in the NFL. It does seem like the season ended on Sunday. It seems that way to me. But when you look at the standings, 3-4, 2 weeks ago, you're saying, no, Minnesota, they're going to trade Kirk Cousins. They're done. And now they won 2 in a row, and they're 3-4, and they're very much in the mix to win their division. So Leno is addressing the up and down nature, as my buddy Zabe calls it, the kaleidoscope nature of the league. It looks one way one week and another way the following week. Leno's been around. He knows how it works. That's the NFL. You know what I'm saying? That's what it is. You got to be able to have, short memory when you have losses like that. Compartmentalize, understand that that's one loss, and you got to move forward. And it's every week you can say must win, but every week in the league is a must win. You don't want to walk around in a locker room or around the city, with a loss on your back. You know what I'm saying? You want to get that off. You want to get a W. So that's every single week, every single time in the National Football League. It's all about winning.
So now comes the question: if they don't win on Sunday, they'd be 3-5, not out of it, but you got the trade deadline coming up. Trade deadline is Tuesday. Now, there's no reason for Ron Rivera to trade anybody because he's got one more year on his contract after this. He's got new ownership who he's trying to impress, trying to win as many games as he possibly can. He's not going to make a deal. Now, if ownership is involved in this and they're saying, hey, Ron, looks bleak here, you're not really going to have a team that's going to be in the playoffs, and if whatever reason you slip in, the chances of you winning a playoff game are pretty slim there. Let's build for the future, and that's an ownership decision. That's you can call what Ron Rivera does coach centric, that he makes the final decisions on all moves football wise in the operation. Maybe that's how his contract reads, but new ownership, they're looking to turn this thing around, turn around a franchise that's been in the toilet thanks to the previous ownership. So they may say to him, "Hey, sorry, we're gonna have to make a deal here. We're gonna have to unload a couple of these guys with expiring contracts. One of them possibly could be Chase Young. The other one could be Montez Sweat. Maybe there's a couple of other guys that they're looking at. It's another name that's being thrown around now, and it's an interesting look from the Cleveland Browns, who have had quarterback issues now. They're playing with a backup quarterback. Jacoby Brissett has been there, and his name is being thrown around as possible trade. I don't think you want to make that move because you still need to have two quarterbacks. And Sam Howell getting sacked 40 times, the odds say at some point he's going to get hurt. It's 7 games into this. You still got 10 to go, so you need another quarterback. And the other thing is he's been kind of a mentor to Howell. Howell has talked about this all the time, that he's helped him with a lot of things. So if you're going to try to continue to develop Sam Howell, having a backup next to him who understands the role, who understands what he was brought here to do, to play if needed, but also to help in the development of Sam Howell, you probably keep him around. You probably wouldn't trade Jacoby Brissett unless the offer is just ridiculous. And Howell, talking to reporters yesterday, discussed how Brissett has been helpful in helping him to overcome the sack problem, as well as his other coaches.
Yeah, just talking to him, talking to my coaches. I mean, I think we have a good feel for how I can do my part as far as avoiding the sacks. It's just a matter of me going out there and trying to grow in that area each and every week, and I feel like I have made progress in that area. I think I'm doing a better job getting rid of the football. Obviously, we still got to do a better job and doing different things to prevent those sacks. But, yeah, I mean, everyone's trying to do their part for sure. It's one of those things where, we want to – obviously the sack problem is definitely an issue, and we want to try to avoid that and try to, limit those numbers. But at the same time, I still want to go out there and play how I'm coached to play and still keep my eyes downfield and be able to locate those guys and not be too worried about the rush, and let those guys up front do their job. So, yeah, there's definitely a balance of trying to avoid sacks but also trying to still play quarterback for sure.
A couple of things on the sack front. One is the balance that they've had on offense, where they're throwing the ball 58% of the time. Only the Minnesota Vikings are throwing the ball more often. Brian Robinson, last 3 games, he's had 24 carries, and he's had only 64 yards, which is 2.6 yards a carry. And there's one way to look at it. They say, well, defenses have figured him out. He played really well last year, but clearly he doesn't have it. Now, you can't have 24 carries for Brian Robinson in 3 games. Running backs get in a rhythm, and when you see a running back have a 100-yard game, there's probably at least a 30-yard run in there most of the time, or a decent-sized run. So when you're only giving it to him an average of 6 times a game and you get only 64 yards, well, that's kind of what you get. I mean, Barry Sanders' numbers, you look at him, he'd have a 100-yard game, and you take away the 80-yarder he had, and he was averaging like 2 yards a carry. That's kind of the way that's why I've always supported Emmitt Smith as a better running back than Barry Sanders, because Emmitt moved the chains. That's the idea. But Barry Sanders, if you look at overall numbers, he was able to get that often on one big carry that he would bust. You got to keep pounding, and you get the guy through. So I think that's part of it. The other thing is the offensive line, which Nikki Jabala wrote about today, and how they're considering changes, possibly even benching Nick Gates, who signed a 3-year, $16.5 million contract in the offseason. He's been terrible, was terrible last week against the Giants. They may put in Tyler Larson, who's filled in the past. He's playing on a minimum deal. The problem is you got $8 million guaranteed to Gates, and you don't want that sitting on the bench. And also, you've had Sam Cosmi, who I think is a natural tackle, playing guard now, and Andrew Wiley, who was also an offseason free agent signing, got a 3-year, $24 million contract. He's been terrible as well. And Ron Rivera did allow for the fact that he might make some changes on the offensive line. The guys that he's drafted, he drafted linemen to help him out this year. Ricky Stromberg in the 3rd round, he's barely played, 26 snaps. And tackle Braden Daniels taken in the 4th round. He hasn't played at all because of a knee injury and is on injured reserve for the year. So there's that problem. As far as what they're going to be facing from the Eagles' defense, Howell has looked at the tape, and here's what he's seeing.
Yeah, they're good. Eagles definitely one of the best defenses in the league. I think they're the best defense against the run so far this year, and I think they're probably 5th or 6th against the pass. And so they're I could be wrong, but I think those are the right numbers. But they're doing a good job. And they're doing a good job up front. Obviously, they have all those guys up front, and I could sit here all day and name all those guys they have. They have so much talent up there up front, and they have a good job. They have good players in the secondary. Everyone's kind of starting to get back healthy, and then they just signed the guy from Tennessee who's a good player. So they definitely have all the players they need to be successful, and they've been playing really well on defense the past few weeks. So we'll definitely have our hands full.
You guys are so close up there. What went well in that game that you want to duplicate this time around?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. You can kind of get into the whole, like, what do we think they're going to do differently? What should we do differently? But I think the main thing is whatever, our plan is, we just got to execute it. And no matter kind of if they want to make any adjustments or anything, then we'll be ready for that and we'll be ready to adjust. But we're gonna go into the game, with however EB feels, and we just got to execute. That's what it comes down to.
Well, hopefully EB feels like running the ball a little bit more because they haven't done a lot of that. And this narrative that we've heard now for weeks is, oh, the scheme is good. What we plan to do is we're just not executing well. Okay, but if you're not executing well, maybe you should come up with another plan because you're not carrying out this one very well. Coming up, Dave Barnett will join me from Dallas, preview of the World Series, plus what we saw from Victor Wembanyama in his debut last night. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
World Series starting tomorrow night. I think the matchup we all anticipated, right? Arizona at Texas, and we've got all the games here on ESPN 630, starting at 7 o'clock with the pregame, 8 o'clock first pitch, and my buddy Dave Barnett is with us from down. We got phone issues again. See, this is what I'm going to get to. We're going to get him back on the phone here as soon as we can. He's back? We have him back? You were there? Yeah. Okay. Hello?
I'm here, Andy. I'm here.
Okay. Yeah. So here's what I was going to say. This is a little inside baseball, but Dave and I got together for breakfast when he was here a few weeks ago to do North Texas against Navy, and a mutual friend was with us who had also worked in Dallas at the time. All three of us were there, and he lives now in Annapolis, and he was discussing the idea of moving to Dallas. And I pointed out to him, like, every time I have Dave on the show, we're talking about either ridiculously hot weather or ridiculously cold weather. And now you got, phone issues in Dallas too, right?
Yeah, and it's probably because something very, very strange is happening here. It's raining.
Yeah.
Hard time dealing with this meteorological phenomena.
So I hopefully I was able to convince Ed that Annapolis isn't such a bad place to live. But if he moves to Dallas and encounters hot weather and cold weather and phone issues when it rains, as we say in our family, gagazut. That's just. That's just the way it goes. So, as you know, Dave has had a long play-by-play career. In fact, he's done play-by-play for all three teams that we're going to talk about here, starting with the Rangers, who open up tomorrow night. And, after the way the season ended, where they lost the division to Houston on the final day of the season, then reeled off 8 straight before, taking out Houston in 7 games. Is this, I imagine it's a surprise there to see the Rangers in the World Series.
I could show you texts that I sent to my brothers and a few cousins at the end of the regular season, and I predicted a quick 2-game exit because the Ranger bullpen was simply not up to playoff par. In fact, they are the worst bullpen statistically ever to even make the postseason. Less than 50% save rate, and yet here they are. So, the thing that came out of nowhere was the bullpen righted itself, and the offense showed up. I mean, shut out on the last day of the regular season at Seattle, and then suddenly the bats woke up. Game 7 in Houston, the top of the order, finally did what it had been doing most of the year. Simeon and Seager, difficult to deal with. And now Adolis Garcia is in a campaign to get a statue built outside Globe Life Field. So none of that seemed possible at the end of the regular season just based on how they had played at the end of the regular season. But Bruce Bochy talks about this all the time. He's never seen a team more resilient, more even-keeled. They had to fly from Seattle to Tampa. That's about as long a flight as you can do in the continental U.S. to get ready for the wild card series, and that was their mental reset, and here they are.
Yeah, look, Bochy, I'm sure, deserves a lot of credit for it, and he had come out of retirement to take this job. When he was named manager, was there, hey, this is a guy who won 3 World Series with the Giants, or, gee, I hope they can squeeze something out of this retread. What was the feel then?
Well, at that point, they already brought in Simeon and Seager, and it was clear that Ray Davis, the owner, had decided finally not to die with all his money. And so he's been putting it to good use. And so they were already, on the road to legitimacy. And I think if they hadn't already made those transactions, I don't think Bruce Bochy would have come out of retirement. But he saw what was in the works here. And, he'd managed Chris Young in San Diego. They had that relationship. And so when Bruce Bochy came on, that was like the ultimate certification that this is a serious turnaround in progress. He was the stamp of legitimacy.
Yeah, and look, you can talk all you want about building a farm system and bringing up players, and certainly the Orioles did a great job with that this year, and the Rays making the playoffs, but money does help, and when you have money to throw around and bring in players like Max Scherzer, who I guess to come to Texas, they agreed to pick up the option on his contract for next year for like $40 million. And look, he's not great, but he's got a lot of experience. And do you think, based on the last two outings, that he's going to get a start in this series?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. He's got to be game 3, and they just hope that, little by little he regains form. He was better in his second outing against the Astros than he was in his first. So, they're hoping for continued improvement there. But I think with him, the main thing is his incredible mental focus about exactly this, about getting here and winning it all. So I think that will overcome a lot in whatever he's still dealing with and trying to get his arm 100%.
Yeah, he said he's got a cut on his thumb, but he's going to pitch through that. Look, we watched it here, and it was great. I mean, regular season, he's spectacular. His overall record in postseason, even when he's back with Detroit, not that good. But, and baseball's different than the other sports. Like in football, you'd like to see a linebacker with the look that Scherzer has on his face in the dugout. Baseball doesn't necessarily work that way, but I think we as sports fans gravitate to that. Oh, boy, he's a bulldog. He wants to win. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And it rubs off on his teammates. I mean, it has to. That's the guy that you don't want to let down in the locker room or the dugout. So, I think every successful team has that personality, and that's what Max Scherzer brings to the Rangers.
I've had fun watching Aroldis Chapman, who I've seen in many postseasons now, including the Cubs when they won the World Series, and the feeling is always the same. Grab the sides of the car tightly, because this could be great or this could be a disaster. What's it been like watching him all season come in to try and save games?
I mean, this is what he's done all along. This is who he is. This incredible ball of intensity. And I think the biggest surprise of everything that erupted, in the benches clearing episode in Arlington was that he didn't actually throw any punches. I think he can thank Yordan Alvarez for that, for grabbing him and walking him away from, further misdeeds. But if he had, I think in the regular season, he would have earned himself a long suspension. I think he had just enough self-control to let it go at that point. But, and Chris Young is just on the local station here talking about how that moment really produced the 2 wins in Houston in Game 6 and 7.
Wow.
He said at that point, even though, there was definitely fallout at the end of that game, but he said that he went to Houston with absolutely no doubt that they were going to get it done. And so, what Scherzer gives in terms of team personality, I think Dulles gives a lot of that too in the locker room.
Yeah, I want to get to him, but first, Houston, they need to move, Dave. This good team. They're the only team in history to lose 7-game series, losing all 4 at home. That's remarkable. Like the Orioles moved back the left field wall, and that probably helped them. And they've been really good since that happened. Somebody's got to take a look at that stadium and look at the roster they have and say, we got to reconfigure some things. I mean, that's almost hard to do what they did both against the Nats and against the Rangers.
Or could it be this? Now, remember, when Minute Maid Park opened as Enron Field, there was Towles Hill out in center field.
I remember that. Yeah.
It was a recreation of a Crosley Field in Cincinnati used to have. And they unofficially named it in honor of Tal Smith, former Astro general manager, and now that's gone. So you connect the dots.
Yeah, okay. So maybe you bring it back?
That makes as much sense as anything.
But that, that's an ACL waiting to happen, right? Don't you think? Yeah, I mean.
Well, I'd never heard of anybody getting hurt. It was just a great throwback touch to the stadium. But, I mean, obviously, I'm throwing out a ridiculous reason, but I mean, there are only ridiculous reasons to explain how a team that good with that much talent plays that badly at home. It's one of the, and will continue to be one of the biggest mysteries in the great game of baseball. There is no explanation.
Right. We're talking to Dave Barnett from Dallas, longtime play-by-play voice, now does North Texas sports. You mentioned Adolis Garcia, and for those of us who don't follow baseball as closely as others, I think most people would be surprised to learn that he's 30 years old. Where's he been? I mean, has he been this type of player throughout his career?
No. I mean, he's blossoming now. That's one of the good things that the Rangers have done is getting guys who are just ready, to fully flower into who they apparently always could have been. So, that's something that every championship team needs too, is people who all find the full measure of their talents together at just the right time. And that's kind of his story this year. And he's, along with the rest of them, very prone to slumps. Could happen again. I think, the story of the World Series is going to be if the Rangers can get leads into the late innings, because if they have to face that Arizona bullpen coming from behind, forget it. I mean, as hot as it is, I don't like his odds against that Arizona bullpen.
Yeah, and I guess the way baseball is played is a little bit differently, but his performances have been the old, well, let's stick it in his ear kind of thing, which they did at one point. But I guess in modern baseball, everything that he does, admiring his home runs, even admiring a double the other night, that's okay. That's kosher now, it seems.
Well, yeah, and for the Astro fans to take umbrage at that, I think is very selective and ridiculous, because how many dozens of players do that now? They would have gotten dusted in the 60s, 70s, 80s, even 90s, and that's what the Astros try to do to them, and look at the results. So that's just the era we live in. People are more accepting of personal demonstrative moments in baseball, which never used to happen, but that's the 21st century game.
Exactly. We're talking to Dave Barnett, who has also done NBA for both the Mavericks and the Spurs, and they met last night. And how'd you like to be Luka Doncic today? You have 33 points, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists, and you're the oh, by the way story from last night as Victor Wembanyama made his debut. What did you make of how Wembanyama played?
I think he showed pretty much everything that he's got in addition to the inexperience and early foul trouble and all that. But, the player he most reminds me of in terms of not just his physique but his game is Ralph Sampson.
Yep.
But Ralph Sampson's first shot as a rookie with the Houston Rockets was not a 30-footer, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Well,
his first make was not a 25-foot free. So, we're talking about a different era in baseball. We're definitely in a different era in basketball. But, his ability to shoot from anywhere, handle the ball, block a shot almost from anywhere, that was all on display. And, I think Pop is going to be very judicious with his minutes. Probably his entire rookie year, bring him along slowly, but it was all there. He wasn't the best player on the floor last night, but that's not going to be the case for very long with him.
You know, it's funny. They used to say about Ralph Sampson, well, he's 7'4", but he wants to play like a guard. Now they'd say, hey, play like a guard. It's you're right. It's a different game. Now, as far as the foul trouble goes, I think teams are going to see that and come at him. I mean, he's even skinnier than Sampson. I mean, is he ever going to be able to defend, or will they just say, don't defend, just hang around the perimeter?
I think that's where he's going to be his most dangerous.
Yeah,
is his ability to reach from nowhere and block 3-pointers.
That's true. That's true.
The perimeter.
Yeah.
He's so easy to push off the block. I think that's the only thing opposing scouting reports are going to be. You know, we've got to figure out a way to muscle this guy. And so then Pop's counter is, okay, how do we draw up situations to keep him out of, big scrums down on the low post? So it's strange to see somebody with that size with only, I think it was 5 rebounds last night. Mm-hmm. So, he may never average 12 to 15 rebounds just because of his difficulty and probably not getting pushed off the block. But I think that's not necessarily going to be a big part of his job description.
Yeah. Now, were you doing the games when Tim Duncan was a rookie? Was that overlapping you?
Not the year he was a rookie. I came back and I was doing the games one of their championship seasons, 06, 07. So
Okay.
yeah, I did the Tim Duncan Spurs.
Well, you're familiar with his development. It's not the same thing because he was a 4-year college player. But this is now seen as number 3 for Pop, even though he was not the coach when David Robinson came along, or I think even Duncan, right? He wasn't even Duncan's coach his rookie year, wasn't it? Bob Hill? I think it was, right? Bob Hill, first year?
Yeah, it was right in there where Pop replaced Hill with himself, and the rest is history.
Yeah, I would do that too. Oh, look at this roster. I think I'll coach that. But I just, wonder, and Pop a little bit, and you say that he will limit his minutes, and maybe at some point they'll start to draw up some plays for him and things like that. But, given his success in developing the other two, what you think of the overall game plan to get this guy to be a superstar in the league?
He couldn't be in better hands.
Yeah.
Coach David Robinson, Coach Tim Duncan, and now he's, got, the third out of nowhere great luck in the lottery with a guy who's being talked about as the best prospect ever, at least since LeBron James. So, who knows more basketball than Pop? Who knows more winning NBA basketball, especially? And who knows more about developing young, gifted, big men? I think it's also really fortunate that Wemby is in San Antonio because the amazing, and this, I've been down there, the amazing thing about it being a one-horse town is how much latitude the public gives the Spurs.
Mm-hmm.
They're not hounded night and day. I think if Wemby was a Laker or a Knick, I think his life would be entirely different than it's going to be in San Antonio because the people just tend to be glad they're there, give them their space, give them their love, but, not make it hard to just live a, acceptable everyday life. And I think that is really going to benefit Wemby throughout his career.
Yeah, and he's got a coach who's 75 years old, just signed a 5-year contract, so he's good for business for everybody. Those of us who are getting older, we look at that enviously, like, hey, how about that? Look at Pop. Nice.
That's going to be I'm going to use that phrase a lot, I think. Look at Pop.
Yeah, that's right. As you go in to talk to prospective people about jobs and so forth and contracts, hey, I'm a lot younger than Pop. I can keep going. Yeah. Well, you don't have Victor Wembanyama along with you, so if you want to bring him, then we can talk. Exactly.
There's that.
Yeah. You like the Rangers to win this? You like them to win the World Series?
Yeah, I do. One of the saddest elements of the 2 previous World Series they were in 2010 and 2011 is that's the only period in baseball history where you could make back-to-back World Series and never have home field advantage in either one.
Right.
Because Bud Selig, went to the decision to award World Series home field advantage to the winners of the All-Star game.
Yeah.
Nonsensical decision at the time, but that meant that Rangers were on the road for most of series that the Giants won in 2010. and in St. Louis for infamous Game 6 and 7 in 2011. So they finally have home field. I think that's going to help them a ton. Both these teams feel like teams of destiny, but I think the Rangers, top of the order, is now firing. You know, Simeon was nowhere most of the playoffs and seemed to find himself in Game 7. Seager a little bit lost his mojo and then regained it big time in Game 7. And now Garcia is just hitting everything to the moon. I think it's going to come down to, again, if Arizona can get a lead into the late innings, I don't see anybody touching that bullpen. And if the Rangers have a lead into the late innings, there's not a single reliever that any Ranger fan has confidence in. Even, I'm not exaggerating, not a single one. Maybe Josh Spores. He seems to have found himself the most. But Aroldis Chapman shows up with an 8-run lead. No Ranger fan is going to think.
No. That's always like, because he throws so.
And the Diamondbacks, just anybody they throw out there, they're all shut down, unhittable.
Yeah.
So that's the Diamondbacks' advantage. If they can get it to 3-2 in the 7th, I think they have a really good chance of winning those games.
All right, well, if you see our mutual friend Mike Reiner, I'm glad he's okay, because I was following him on Twitter when Altuve hit the home run in Game 6, and I thought, God, if there's a bridge nearby, we're going to say goodbye to our longtime friend. But it sounds like he's back on track now. They're in the World Series, so tell him I said good luck with that.
Will do.
Right.
He'll appreciate your support.
Good to talk to you, Dave. Take care.
As always, take care, Eddie.
That's Dave Barnett in Dallas. A little preview of World Series coming up. And again, we have all the games here on ESPN 630, starting with pregame tomorrow at 7 o'clock.